Good morning, everyone. Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry, Krakowie. Bardzo miło jest być tu z wami dzisiaj. As a designer and natural empath, I'm always looking for ways to connect with other people coming from different culture, language, and identity, like yourself. And as a design manager, it's my role to create conditions in which great design can happen. Therefore, today, we are talking about designer rituals. And what we're going to do, we will dive into the fascinating world of rituals itself, this fascinating phenomenon that is as old as the humankind. And we will look what actually lies underneath, so we can see how we can use that to create more trust, more collaboration, and finally, this is what it takes to turn a bunch of individuals into a well-performing collective. All right, so rituals are omnipresent, it's fair to say, spanning across geographies, cultures, civilizations, and eras up until today. And rituals are basically the way we worship, the way we practice our religion or spiritual practices, the way we start our day and set it for success, the way we mark important life milestones like birthdays, weddings, graduation ceremonies, and sometimes divorce. And also the way we pay tribute to the past, to the heroes of our countries, to our heritage, and to our culture. And finally, we also use rituals to symbolically celebrate transition of different seasons, from spring to winter, for instance, spring to summer, spring to this, of course, joking, from spring to summer. And also, we use rituals to mark transition when it comes to people's life and death. And there is an interesting fall tradition that originates from where I come from, actually several villages surrounding my hometown in Croatia. And what you see on this picture are the bellmen, or as we call them, zvončari. And this is a tradition in which a group of men gather every year on 17th of January on the holiday of Saint Anthony the Hermit, and they march along these villages from where they come from. And they do that wearing this particular costume that consists of a large zoomorphic mask with horns and tongue that resembles, if you are familiar with Guillermo del Toro, to his movies. Also mandatory is to have a striped t-shirt, white pair of trousers, a red tie around your neck, a piece of sheepskin attached to their back. You can see it looks like a vest in a way. Also chunky leather boots and a big tin bell that you would usually see on a cow, and they attach it here. And that's how they go. They march really strong, and they produce a large sound, large noise. They are yelling and ringing their bells, and they are doing this to chase away evil spirits of winter and the Satan himself, and welcome spring. So it's basically a transition ritual, pagan ritual originating from the Middle Age, but it has been preserved until today. And apparently, similar versions of it exist in other parts of Europe, like North Italy, Macedonia, Greece, and Basque Country. And if you would ask these people, these men, only men by the way, why are you doing this? They will say, well, it's what we do, you know, it's our thing. I'm so proud of this custom because it's what my father taught me and what his father taught me and his father and so on. So this story tells us that rituals are intrinsic to our identity. This is our way to show group affiliation to where we come from. And it is rituals, the reason why we do them actually is all these emotions that they trigger. They make us feel safe, they make us feel belong, sometimes immense sense of joy and happiness, even ecstasy, and sometimes grief, pain, and release. Think of funerals, for instance. So, collective effervescence, this is the name of phenomenon that lies behind rituals. And it's a term coined by pioneering sociologist Emil Durkheim around 100 years ago to describe that sense of shared energy and harmony that people feel when they gather around a shared experience or a purpose. And these sensations are exactly what it takes to generate more collaboration and more trust amongst people who just came together to form a team. So the group of anthropologists wanted to validate whether rituals enhance our enjoyment of a certain task, in their case, food consumption. So what they did, they gathered a group of around 60 students and divided them into 2 segments. Both segments received chocolate, free chocolate, everyone, but also the first segment received special instructions on how to consume that chocolate. Second segment received none. And the instructions went like this. So take your chocolate and break it while it's still in the wrapping paper. And then unwrap the first half and eat it. And only once you're done, unwrap the second part and eat it. And it turns out that the group who received instructions, in fact, took part in a ritualized chocolate eating experience. And they reported that they enjoyed this chocolate much more than those who haven't. And I know what you're thinking. Chocolate. Who doesn't like chocolate? How easy it is to make people enjoy it. So they repeated the same experiment, but this time with carrots. And you might want to save this trick if you have kids. So the results were the same. Instructions were somewhat different, but finally they have proven that rituals enhance the enjoyment of a certain task, in their case consumption, because of the greater involvement in that experience. And this is exactly what sets rituals apart from habits and routines. So you can think of rituals as yoga as compared to brushing your teeth, something you do on rather autopilot. Because rituals are a mindful practice that makes us focus on the actual experience of a task rather than its completion. And now I would like to share about more experiments. The way we experimented with design a ritual to shape culture of collaboration and raise design maturity over time in an industrial IoT company, Relayer. To give you a bit of context, it was the very beginning of year 2020, and our team started to grow, and we started to onboard new team members, including myself. We went from 4 people who are not really a team, who just happened to work in the same company, to a team of 8 who's supposed to feel like a team and work together. However, the pandemic was in full swing and left us quite unprepared, like many others, I'm sure. So the only shared practice we had was the morning stand-up. And this was a time where everyone's supposed to be sharing some verbal updates. I'm working on this, I'm working on that. And this session was called Design Coffee Time, but honestly, it's supposed to be called wake-up call or just get your shit together. So what happened is that until it reaches your turn, you simply forget what 5 people before said, and you're still kind of trying to figure it all out. And apart from that, we had a bunch of other ad hoc meetings that were scattered across the week. Either 2 designers supposed to work on a shared topic, or also what is not shown on this picture, other meetings happening with cross-functional teams that each designer was part of. And as you can imagine, a lot of these meetings could simply have been an email. So what happened? A few months later, the pandemic measures got a bit more relaxed, and we have given an opportunity to come to the office once a week and work together. So we started a new ritual called Design Day, or a fancy way of calling a day in which we come to the office. And it is supposed to bring more structure into our workload, meaning that this is one day where only designers work together and meet and develop more collaboration, more connection, and then all other meetings can happen other days. But this day, don't touch us. Don't schedule any other meetings. So you can think of the design day as a container for other sessions related to our culture and collaboration. And what really made it a ritual is that it had a predefined start consisting of an icebreaker and also session in which we plan the day, where we actually see which sessions are we going to have, what kind of meetings and what kind of workshops, and we walk through the agenda. And then the content itself, that would vary from one design day to another, depending on the topics you would like to talk about, collaborate on, sync, and basically any person in our team could propose a topic that they needed support, for instance. And each design day would be symbolically consumed in form of a shared lunch, which over time evolved into something that we called lunch drama. You can ask me about this later. And every day would finish around 5, 6 p.m., meaning we had these sessions throughout the day after lunch. And finally, we would wrap it up formally with a retrospective where everyone can vote how the day went and say from 1 to 5 what was the return on their time invested. And also we played a game to kind of keep it fun and casual. And we also had informal closure, which consisted of a dinner. And that also became a ritual in its own. And you know what? As the pandemic was raging and the world was shut, this was our social highlight of the week. And we didn't even feel like we are going to work, you know? We would just come there and we were so happy. Oh, I'm gonna see my colleagues, we're gonna have fun. We will talk navigation, we will talk filters, we will talk design system, we will share knowledge about the latest things in Figma and so on. And it basically felt like running our own private conference. So over time, we perfected this whole practice, and we started using Asana to create agenda, to mark type of sessions, to assign duration and who needs to be there. But also, this is a point where we started to feel like a real team who works on a shared goal, but also has a shared human experience. And as we develop more trust, which simply emerged organically, we started to be more ready and more okay with sharing our work in progress. So a session that emerged was a design critique. It's a session where a designer is sharing their work in progress, be it on a concept level, wireframes, different flows, maybe something halfway through, or more polished designs. And the reason to share the work is to get feedback from the whole group, to harness their collective intelligence and creativity, and to see if they are seeing the truth from the right angle, or maybe there are other perspectives they should look into, or maybe in some other team members are more experienced and could provide expertise on a certain topic. But design critique is never about giving the presenter solution and say, why don't you do this or that, but rather unblocking their thinking and saying, how might we do this, or have you considered maybe trying this direction, or what is the reason why you are doing this? So by asking questions, it's a rather Socratic method, we are unblocking the person who is sharing the work. And this is an example of a flow that we critique, and then people left their feedback around it. But also over time, we became more intentional the way we approach our craft, the way we talk design topics, the way we communicate it internally, and the way we work together. So it just became natural to develop our design principles, to see, okay, what would be the shared baseline that we all have when we approach our craft, or what makes it relevant for the industry that we are working in. Industrial IoT and predictive maintenance. So we also develop our own critiques, etiquettes, meaning the way we meet, what are the rules and behaviors, the way we do meeting in a hybrid setup, in a remote setup, and so on. We also discussed how do we handle difficult behaviors, for instance, of stakeholders in the workshops. We standardized our design process and tools. We developed frameworks, for instance, navigation model, visual language, and so on. And that's when it occurred to us that we are no longer just a bunch of people who work together. We are a group of people who trust each other. We would not be reaching this point without rituals. And so, as we were continuously improving, we decided to iterate on our morning stand-up, well known as design coffee time. So we felt, okay, let's bring more structure. So instead of everyone sharing verbal update, and other people forgetting what it is about, let's use a Jira board, which would kind of aggregate all the tickets happening in the wild in different product teams. And even people who don't work on a hands-on design, but rather something strategic, or maybe who are developing a framework or working with a customer, they could create their own ticket for the sake of transparency. And basically, we used Jira and at the same time Asana for managing our design day. But this approach only seemingly solved the issue, but the core issue of attention and focus remained. And that's why a few months later, that was already a year after we became a team, after we were forming, we decided to split our stand-ups into focus groups. That means that only people who work together, who have collaboration touchpoints, should meet once a week in a stand-up format, and others don't have to be present, so we can save our time. And that means how it looked in the context of our week. So we had 3 distinct stand-up for 3 different groups of people. We also had a couple of design system sessions, which I didn't want to talk today about because that was a separate team that I led, but in the context of design rituals, we are focusing rather on things we did inside the product design. And also another ritual emerged called Design All Hands. This is something we used to have in the design day, but we felt it makes sense to decouple it and to put it on Friday, so we have a symbolic ending of the week. So a day where we share some updates, like what happened in terms of who did we meet, what did stakeholders say, and if there were any changes in the company. And yeah, we felt like we reached that point, you know. We created a sense of culture. We felt we belong. We fostered alignment, more communication, and more collaboration, you know. It felt like we had it all. So if you think, what's the catch? There is a catch always. Things work until they don't. Second year into pandemic, you know, we experienced early signs of burnout. We also felt fatigue from each other. You know, we talk about everything. We standardized every single thing you could possibly standardize. We developed this perfect operating rhythm and efficiency, but also our company was facing attrition, which meant so much workload, so many things that we need to work on, and it simply felt like a luxury to have one day full of design topics and playground. It was also hard to justify to stakeholders. So we noticed a drop of engagement, not only in design day, but also in the morning stand-ups, and also in design system-related sessions. So we decided to give it one more try. Instead of focused stand-ups, we decided, let's bring everyone together one more time. So let's have one session every Monday, and only that session, in which everyone shares what they are working on. So we still are in loop. We know what the team is working on, and we do this by sharing our screens. So every team member has 5 minutes to share what they are working on, directly from Figma. That can be any kind of hands-on design. They can be a piece of user research. That can be any framework we are working on. And even if you're not working on a hands-on task, that can be, for instance, interesting YouTube video or a workshop template or an article that you feel it brings value to others. And why this ritual made sense and what made it connect all the dots is the fact that, number one, we brought all people together in the same room that day, 1 hour every week. And on the other hand, because people shared their work, we could, as a group, curate topics for the design day and see, okay, this person seems to be struggling with creating a new elevator maintenance flow, so why don't we handle it in a design critique and provide feedback and help this person unblock. So anything that deserved urgent attention was followed up on the same week. And as you may notice, we reduced the cadence of the design day. As I said earlier, it felt like a luxury. So our design day was one day only 90 minutes long, and the next week it used to be around 5 hours. And then any other topic that was not so urgent would be followed up in the longer version of the design day. So we had design system office hours, we had brainstorming sessions, we had design critiques, we had show and tell or knowledge share sessions, and we would still finish it with the retro. And also interesting thing emerged as we became so aware of how we feel and all these psychological things happening. We started to have weekly health check instead of design all hands. So it was a day where everyone could share how they felt that week and give it a rating from 1 to 5 and share also their milestones for the upcoming week. And the reason it worked out this time is that, well, obviously we had so many iterations, we tried so many different things, and we were no strangers to each other. So it just felt natural to get it right this time. And it's also a result of lots of listening and observation, and the fact that the whole team could give their inputs and honestly say, okay, seriously guys, this is not working, what can we do about it? So you may wonder, okay, will I need 2 years to develop a perfect collaboration ritual? Well, hopefully not, thanks to these insights and being more intentional about it. So what I'm going to do, I will share with you a couple of tips and best practices and also steps how to create your own ritual. And I would like to encourage you to propose ideas in your teams, even if you're not necessarily a more senior member of the team, a lead or a designer, lead or manager. Because in a healthy working environment, everyone should be able to give suggestions and propose areas for improvements as long as they are relevant, so not just for the sake of it. And if there is anything you could learn from the examples that I shared, is that there is no point of perfecting the format and not to mention tools, because it will change anyways. So it really doesn't matter. And because ritual is a mindful practice, instead, you should ask your team, why are we doing this thing in the first place? Or are we asking the right questions? Or how do we know that we are having meaningful conversation that will lead to solving the right problem or the real problem? And how do we make sure that we are surfacing the most impactful ideas out there and that everyone can share, not only those who are more extrovert? Having said that, once you're clear on your why should persist and your ways will change. So when creating a new ritual, there are a couple of factors to consider. We covered your why, obviously, the goal you're trying to achieve, but then you need to really think, who are the stakeholders? And by stakeholders, I mean people who are attending these stand-ups or these rituals or any kind of session, who needs to be in the room. And there is a big difference if we are talking about a ritual for a team of 7 or team of 28. And also, stakeholders are those who need to give us the blessing, who own this decision, so we need to get approval. And then finally, we need to be clear on what is kind of outcome we are trying to achieve, whether it's more alignment, whether it's more efficiency, or more craft and more creativity. And only then we can think, okay, what is the right format out there? There are many standard formats, but also we can create our custom or take something existing and adopt it a little bit. And finally, what really takes most time and energy are the logistics. So in order to have a ritual, we need to properly kick it off, to ensure there is commitment, to ensure everyone understands what are we trying to achieve with this ritual, and how often is it going to be, which days of the week. And someone needs to do the bookkeeping, you know, create calendar invites, update the description, invite team members, onboard new team members as they join. But also, we have a lot of work when it comes to facilitating the ritual itself. So someone needs to facilitate and keep track of time, take notes or list some action items, and then sometimes chase these people and ask them, hey, what's the status update of what we discussed? So it's a lot of work. And the most importantly is to measure the efficiency, seeing really what would make this ritual success, what are the kind of baselines to call it a success, and what are the mechanisms we can do to measure, which can be a survey and can be retrospective. So let's create your ritual. There are 5 easy steps, and this is something that you can do as a workshop in a team that can be done in a digital tool like Miro or FigJam, but also you can do it in person with Post-its. So number 1 thing we need to do is to describe our objective, or what are we trying to achieve. And this definition of the objective can be given by one person, a person who is initiating and owning this whole process. And then, second step is to let every participant reflect. And reflection is very important because it wires our minds towards solution. But before coming to a solution, we need to understand what are we doing so well and we should be doing more of, like what works for our team, and then what isn't working so well and how could we potentially improve it. And in this stage, you may notice similar ideas resonating throughout the group, so it would be wise to cluster them. So finally, you will have a couple of main points of reflection. And then it's time to do the brainstorming and share proposals. And when it comes to this stage, it's a point where everyone should write what should we consider trying, what are the best practices out there, maybe what are other successful teams doing from the big companies like Google, Figma, Airbnb, and so on. But also maybe you have a friend who works in another company and you spoke and you learned something new. So this is a point where you can also copy-paste links to articles, templates, Miro boards, and anything that will really kind of relate to the challenge you are facing. And finally, you may also notice, again, that similar ideas resonate throughout the group, but it's important before that that every participant presents their idea and says what do they think, why is this so important, and what makes this proposal relevant. And then after everyone presents, then we can actually cluster those proposals and do the voting. So of course, the proposal or the main topic, proposal group with most dots wins. And this is the point in which you as a team have collaboratively decided on what is your new ritual. So you, for now, give it a name, you give it a definition, and you can already think about how often would it be or what are the times that work best. But if you're talking about the larger team that is harder to coordinate, maybe it makes sense to follow up on this, to maybe run a survey or a doodle to see what would be the times that work for everyone. And this is also a great moment that every team member shares their concerns, shares their suggestions, and that you come up with a checklist to see what are all the logistical aspects you need to think about. So you can do another workshop where you focus purely on the logistics. Or it can be decided by a smaller group of people. And a couple of best practices I would recommend you to have in mind as you create your ritual, whether you take something existing or if you create something completely from scratch. To begin with, make sure to involve others, because once we do that, we are increasing their chance of participation, involvement, and engagement. And we can involve others by involving them in this whole brainstorming part, but we can also rotate some of the duties. We can let different team members facilitate the session, like what we did in the design day, because it was so much work, so it simply made sense to distribute the responsibility. And also it's a great chance for other team members to shine, so they can also practice their facilitation and take on more responsibility. And we can also assign note-taking to another team member, hopefully not a woman, and think about other ways in which we can include others. Which brings me to the second principle or practice, which would be make it inclusive. Keep the cultural and working context in mind when creating a ritual. That means I live in Berlin, so our socializing ritual cannot be based on drinking, because there are people in our team who don't drink alcohol, and we need to make everyone feel respected and invited. So we need to think, how can we create something that brings value to others? That also relates to use of pronouns, which is also a very actual topic in Berlin, or maybe time zones. Maybe you work in a global team that works across the world, and when you want to have your morning stand-up, it's already lunchtime for someone else. So please keep these practices in mind by inviting others to share their concerns and feel they have been heard. And then, as you've seen from our examples, when it comes to morning stand-ups, but also design day, it's always about iteration. So it won't be perfect, I guarantee you that, from the start at least. So what you can do here is to regularly assess whether this ritual brings value to the group over time, and then make small adjustments on the go. So you don't have to make it grand and huge and like the biggest team in the Silicon Valley, but just find what would be these small improvements that work for everyone. And what you see on this picture is example when we were iterating on the weekly health check, which we also changed a couple of times, and where every team member was giving their proposals on what would be the right questions to ask that day and what should we add into our Google Sheet. And on the second picture, you can see evaluation survey from our Lord of the Rings ritual, in which we wanted to see if it really brings value after around 6 weeks. And finally, we are designers, we love to play, we like to experiment, so why don't you experiment with your rituals as well? And what we did here, we tried to use a virtual office called Gather to increase remote collaboration and to have this feeling of an office where you all come to. So it's a place that you can fully customize, have your own little avatars, decorate your room, put a plant where you want, and so on. But this experiment didn't succeed because it turns out to be too distracting. But that's okay. We tried. And let's not underestimate the fun factor. Of course, when appropriate, I don't expect you to do crazy stuff and you have senior stakeholders in the room, but if we are talking about a rather small, intimate team, you can surprise them here and there with some really cool Miro format. And this is exactly what we did. So I asked my peer Maria to create a special template for our retrospective, and she surprised me by creating this one themed with space. And you can see even here a bit of small doodles where people started to play. They were so happy, they were so excited, and we again achieved what the ritual is all about, a mindful practice, where people really felt like immersed in that theme, into that space retro, instead of looking what is the time and when I'm gonna go for my coffee break. And one last thing, we are humans and we are designers, so we like to keep it weird sometimes. And I encourage you to find ways to channel your inner weirdness. And this is what we did every weekly health check on Friday. We would finish that session with a group selfie when every team member had to choose a picture that corresponds to a theme that we agreed on. And this is one of the examples. But we had literally hundreds of such selfies. So to conclude, and I hope you got convinced by now, that rituals are a necessary part of any high-performing team. They help us transcend our own individualism and find our tribe, find our collective, and then harness this collective wisdom and creativity so that we can contribute to our shared goals inside the organization, and do that with solidarity, pride, and joy. And we can hardly say we are user-centric or customer-centric if we are not people-centric in the first place. And to finally wrap it up, when creating your new ritual, think of what is the objective you're trying to achieve. Think of what are the stakeholders, so who needs to be in the room versus who needs to give approval. Think of what is the outcome that you are trying to achieve, whether it's more collaboration or more alignment, for instance, and only then think of the format. And the logistics will follow. So in our case, we use the design day once a week, full day, full of different sessions. It was like a container, but you don't have to do it this way. You can also do design day once a month, or maybe have a two-day mini conference that you do once in a quarter, like whatever works for you, and you only know the answer. And then our design day contained different sessions that could also be done individually. So you can, for instance, use icebreakers to start any session or to kind of let these creative juices start flowing. You can do retrospectives often after you finish important project or when you do a longer workshop. And then I would really recommend you have a stand-up, find your own way of doing stand-up for the sake of sharing updates, do design critiques, find ways to share the knowledge and let people share what they are passionate about and what they learn in a certain project. And also do lots of brainstorming sessions. It's really good and it also increases your collaboration. But whatever you do, keep this in mind. Ways change, but whys persist. And if there is anything at all that I would like to take home with you, would be this. You are making progress, even if it sometimes feels like spinning in circles. Because design rituals are a collective journey, not an outcome. Thank you very much. Dziękuję.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes left for a quick Q&A session, so if there are any questions, please... Oh, okay, I see one question already popping up, so I'm on my way to you.
What is your name, sir?
Andrea, nice to meet you. First of all, thank you for the introduction. I think we are on the right path. I will just do some adjustments, so thank you for the insights. My question is short, then it's what is lunch drama?
Lunch drama. Well, Berlin is a city full of people coming from different cultures and backgrounds, and also it's a city full of different cuisines for you to choose from. So we could never decide on where do we want to go, that we started to argue. But then somehow we found it very fun, and that arguing part became a mandatory part before we go out. So we literally intentionally started to argue and say, no, I don't want your Indian food, no, I don't want your sushi, get away from me and stuff. And it became really fun, and you know, also one sign when the group really develops connection, this is also very interesting when it comes to couples. When you develop your own language, it means that you are developing more connection.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions from the audience in the room? I see one in the behind. I would also like to remind you that those of you joining us online via live stream can ask their questions via the Slido platform, so we highly encourage that as well.
And for the record, I always wanted Italian food. For me, there is no other.
Thank you for the talk. I really enjoyed it. I like the visual part as well, and the part about making it inclusive. That really resonated with me. And I would like to follow up on that, about different preferences people might have when it comes to neurodiversity, being more introverted, extroverted, this kind of dimensions. So I wonder what's your experience with that. Some people might feel more comfortable with some ways of socializing, of running these rituals. For some people, it might be not so natural. So I wonder if you ever consider that, and what is your experience with designing rituals that are, as you said, inclusive? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Well, I would say that what really matters is to make it as a collaborative session, so people can actually share how they feel about something, and if they feel comfortable doing this versus that. And if maybe there is a large group of people that you need to align, say team of 30, maybe it won't be most efficient to do it in a workshop, but rather to create a small survey where people could kind of tick some boxes, add some options, and then when you have some insights, this is a point where you actually do a workshop where you together as a group figure it out. And of course, it's always a challenge to balance the more extroverted part, like myself, and people who are more introvert. And there are many techniques we can adopt to make those silents speak more often. And that would be, for instance, having someone to facilitate, meaning that this person is actually paying attention who is talking and who is not talking. So sometimes they reach out to that person and say, hey, John, I haven't heard you saying much. What do you think about it? So you kind of nudge them. You ask them questions, and when you say someone's name, they wake up. People react to their names. So there are also small techniques that we can do to encourage, but of course you won't change someone's personality. If they are introvert, most likely they will stay introvert. It's only about figuring out how can we work with that. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we've got also a couple of questions from this slide. One of them being, how big is your design team overall?
So the team had different, it was like varying in size. It started as 8, and then it expanded. We had some freelancers coming and going, and finally it was around 10.
Okay, I will also allow myself to ask one of the other questions from Slido. Thanks for the interview. You mentioned it took 2 years for the team to polish your rituals. How did you handle people joining and leaving the company during this period, and how did it influence the process?
Well, whenever a team member leaves the company, it may impact the team morale. So it's also important to have a ritual in which we feel safe to discuss it, to kind of talk openly about it. And whenever a team member joins, that's also the design ops part of the work, we need to ensure we onboard them to our ways of work, to how we do things, how do we collaborate, how do we meet, what kind of sessions do we have, and what can they expect. Because we cannot expect a new hire just, figure our ways and manage it. And that's why I would recommend that every new hire gets a buddy, like another person from the team who kind of holds their hand and shows them around.
All right, thank you. Are there any more questions in the room? I will look around. I see one in the front.
Hi. My question, do the rituals make sense for a small team who are sitting in the same room?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you work every day together, maybe you have this level of connection because you know each other. And in our case, you're a bunch of people who didn't see each other first couple of months. So in your case, it's slightly different. So what you can do, for instance, you can do a stand-up where you hold the ball. And then when it's your turn, you hold the ball. And then you throw the ball into someone randomly. And this person needs to give their update. And you can maybe do a ritual to finish your week together. Or you can create different things that are suitable for your needs, even if you are a small team or 3, 4, 5. It will make you connected more, I'm sure.
All right, so I think you've also answered another questions from the Slido because it was regarding the same topic. So are there any more questions in the room or in the Slido? I see one more. Okay, so we have time just for one more.
And if you still have questions or want to talk about this topic, feel free to come over and let's grab a coffee.
Hi, so I wanted to ask, because I think last version of your rituals was set 1 year ago. So how is engagement of your team right now? Do you have to still motivate people to participate, to go to the meetings, to present? So yeah, what is happening now, 1 year after?
Well, honestly, I cannot tell you because I no longer work there. But the rituals seem to be successful because we were measuring the attendance and does it really deliver on our goal? So I know that the rituals stick at least for 1 year since we started it. And that's another thing I wanted to add, you will do a lot of work, give a lot of love and energy, and maybe you leave the company or things change. It was good what you did in that moment. It doesn't matter because, that's the nature of life. Things change, and it's important to just let it go, and okay, if it works in this moment, great. If it no longer works, also fine. You know, people will manage.